Agape is the selfless love that mirrors God's own love for humanity, a love that is unconditional, sacrificial, and rooted in the dignity of the person. In the realm of social work, agape is not merely an emotion or abstract ideal. It is the very soul of service, justice, and human transformation. It transforms a profession into a calling, bureaucracy into mission, and intervention into ministry. This form of love is not sentimental or passive. It is active, courageous, and often painful, demanding the full participation of the heart, mind, and will. It is what allows a social worker to sit in the darkness with the broken, challenge systems of oppression, and persevere in the face of burnout. Agape enables social workers to become both healers and prophets, holding society accountable while offering care to the most wounded. The word agape originates from ancient Greek and was adopted by the early church to describe the divine love that flows from God to humanity and ought to flow between people. Unlike eros, romantic love, philia, friendship, or storge, familial affection, agape is universal and indiscriminate. In the New Testament, agape is the love that characterizes God himself. God is love, agape. Christ's sacrifice on the cross is the most vivid image of agape. In social work, agape is embodied when practitioners act not for reward or recognition, but out of an unwavering commitment to the good of the client. The Catechism of the Catholic Church defines charity, caritas, equivalent to agape, as the theological virtue by which we love God above all things for his own sake, and our neighbor as ourselves for the love of God, CC 22. Thus, agape in social work is not merely ethical but theological. It is an echo of divine mercy. This theological foundation calls the practitioner to serve with a Christlike love, a love that stoops to wash feet, bears injustice patiently, and never gives up on the human soul. Social workers often find themselves serving individuals and communities steeped in trauma, injustice, and hopelessness. Whether advocating for a child in foster care, helping a family facing eviction, or supporting an elderly client navigating healthcare systems, the social worker must remain rooted in compassion and resilience. Without agape, the work becomes transactional, cold, and bureaucratic. But with agape, every action, from filling out paperwork to testifying in court, becomes an act of love and solidarity. Agape empowers the social worker to look beyond surface behaviors and see the image of God in each client. It resists reductionism. A person is never merely an addict, an abuser, or a victim. They are, first and foremost, a child of God. This foundational lens shapes every interaction, ensuring that the worker does not fall into judgment or detachment, but instead approaches each case with humility, patience, and fierce advocacy. Agape can be expressed through small, everyday actions, remembering a client's birthday, speaking respectfully to someone others have discarded, or simply being present in silence when words fail. It can also be expressed on a macro level through political advocacy, community organizing, and policy reform. The scope of agape is both intimate and vast. Agape is not codependency. It does not mean allowing exploitation, neglecting boundaries, or confusing pity with compassion. Healthy boundaries are, in fact, expressions of agape. A social worker who burns out or enables harmful behavior cannot sustainably serve the client or the community. True love is discerning. It knows when to challenge, when to walk alongside, and when to say no. As St. Augustine said, "Love and do what you will," because real love is always ordered to the good. Boundaries in social work ensure that the professional maintains objectivity, self-care, and ethical integrity. They allow the worker to serve consistently over time. Agape demands sustainability. It does not ask for martyrdom in every moment, but rather a lifelong faithfulness to the mission of love and justice. By keeping clear limits on time, emotional involvement, and role responsibilities, the social worker preserves their capacity to serve with dignity. The Catholic Church teaches the corporal and spiritual works of mercy as ways to live out love in the world. Social workers engage in these daily. Feed the hungry. Food insecurity is a systemic issue that social workers combat through food programs, advocacy, and referrals. Shelter the homeless. Housing First initiatives, case management, and transitional support are direct responses to this call. Visit the sick. Medical social workers serve in hospitals, ensuring dignity and care in times of vulnerability. Clothe the naked. helping families obtain basic needs and dignity resources falls directly within social work's reach. Counsel the doubtful and instruct the ignorant. Every act of case planning, psychoeducation, or empowerment fulfills these spiritual works. Bear wrongs patiently and forgive offenses willingly. These appear regularly in restorative justice efforts, support groups, and therapeutic contexts. Social work thus becomes a concrete extension of the Church's mission to love, restore, and uphold the marginalized. It is sacramental in the sense that it makes invisible grace visible through works of love. Several saints provide luminous examples of agape in social service. Saint Louise de Marillac, co-founder of the Daughters of Charity, she worked directly with the poor, organizing hospitals, orphanages, and schools with tireless compassion. Saint Josephine Bakhita, once a slave, she later became a religious sister known for her gentleness and advocacy against human trafficking. Blessed Pierre, a layman who used his wealth and energy to serve the poor, often saying, "Charity is not enough, we need social reform." Saint Damien of Molokai ministered to lepers in Hawaii, not from a distance, but by living among them and ultimately contracting the disease. Saint Marianne Cope, a contemporary of Damien, she served those exiled by disease with profound medical skill and compassion. These saints did not separate spirituality from action. For them, love of God overflowed naturally into love for the wounded. Each embodied a version of social work: direct service, advocacy, healthcare, education, or accompaniment. Their example shows how agape is lived in specific, courageous, and often inconvenient ways. Agape does not settle for charity alone. It pushes toward justice. Social workers, especially those informed by Catholic social teaching, are called to address the root causes of suffering: poverty, racism, abuse, addiction, lack of access to healthcare and education. The principle of the preferential option for the poor reminds the Church and her ministers that our priority must be with those most harmed by injustice. Love cannot remain at the level of sentiment. It must seek structural change. That includes advocating for policies that support families, reforming punitive systems, and listening to the lived experiences of the oppressed. Agape leads not only to service, but to solidarity. Structural change includes fighting for affordable housing and tenant protections, equitable education access, prison reform and restorative justice programs, protections for refugees and undocumented families, culturally competent and trauma-informed care. Agape fuels these efforts not through political ideology, but through an unrelenting insistence that each person is sacred. It invites Catholics into the public square as artisans of reconciliation. The weight of social work is heavy. Vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and administrative stressors take a toll. Agape, however, is a source of resilience. When rooted in prayer, sacramental grace, and community support, the social worker can draw from an infinite well of strength. Prayer, especially contemplative prayer, reorients the soul toward the source of love. The Eucharist, the summit of agape, offers nourishment not only for the believer, but for their mission. Spiritual direction, confession, and rest are not luxuries. They are necessities for those who serve on the front lines of human suffering. Community among social workers also fosters resilience. When colleagues support one another, share burdens, and affirm each other's dignity, the workplace becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. Peer support groups, ethical debriefings, and spiritual retreats tailored to those in service professions help renew the vision and vitality of agape. For many, social work is not simply a profession but a vocation, a personal call from God to be His hands and heart in the world. Agape infuses this calling with sacred purpose. Each act of service, no matter how mundane, becomes an offering. Each client becomes a meeting place with Christ Himself. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew 25:40. Vocation is sustained not by external success, but by interior fidelity. It is measured not in solved cases, but in the integrity of love offered daily, in the hidden moments of listening, comforting, challenging, and protecting. Social work becomes an altar of sacrifice, where the worker lays down ego, frustration, and ambition in favor of mercy, justice, and grace. Whether in the home of an abused child, the hospital room of a dying patient, or the waiting room of a family court, the social worker stands as a quiet sentinel of God's love. Agape is not always quiet. Sometimes it roars. Social workers must often confront unjust laws, apathetic institutions, or harmful cultural norms. Speaking truth to power is part of love. Christ himself overturned tables and rebuked hypocrisy. Love that does not challenge evil is not love at all. Prophetic agape is what led Dorothy Day to demand housing and fair wages, what drove Oscar Romero to defend the poor against a corrupt state, and what fuels countless social workers today who fight for immigrant rights, child protection, and trauma-informed care. It is the same love that empowers whistleblowers, reformers, and servant leaders to take unpopular stands. In Catholic tradition, prophecy is not only about foretelling the future, but about revealing God's will for the present. Social workers, when moved by agape, become living prophets who announce the dignity of every person and denounce structures that violate that dignity. Their advocacy becomes a form of worship. To be a social worker animated by agape is to be both a warrior and a healer. It is to weep with those who weep, advocate with courage, hold hope when others have none, and believe in restoration even in the midst of despair. It is not easy, it is not glamorous, but it is holy. Agape turns red tape into ribbons of justice, despair into sacred ground, and broken systems into battlegrounds for mercy. The world needs social workers, but more than that, it needs lovers of the poor, defenders of dignity, and heralds of divine compassion. In the end, agape is not a task but a transformation. It is not something we do, but something we become. When infused with God's love, the social worker becomes more than a helper. They become a living witness to the love that redeems the world. Social work done in the spirit of agape is a bridge between heaven and earth. It is incarnational ministry. It is Christ walking again through our streets, sitting in our courtrooms, and waiting in our shelters. And every time a social worker says yes to this love, the kingdom of God draws nearer.